Ethan sat at the table, staring at the bowl in front of him as if it might bite. Emily kept her distance, leaning against the counter, pretending to dry dishes but secretly watching him. The kitchen smelled of warm chicken and herbs, the kind of smell that could pull memories out of nowhere. She held her breath, waiting, knowing this moment mattered more than either of them realized. He lifted the spoon slowly, as though the act itself carried weight. The soup touched his lips, and he froze, eyes narrowing. Emily stayed silent, giving him space, letting him own this small decision. After a long pause, he swallowed. His expression was unreadable, but his voice came quietly. "It tastes like how my mom used to make it." Emily froze. Her hand tightened slightly on the towel she'd been drying, and then she relaxed. "I didn't know," she said softly. Ethan looked down at the bowl again, tracing the steam with his eyes. "She added rosemary too. Everyone said it was weird. But I liked it." Emily's heart pinched. She hadn't tried to copy his mother's recipes. She hadn't known what he missed or how deeply he remembered her. Yet here he was, tasting a meal she'd made and connecting it to the mother he had lost. "I added rosemary by accident," Emily admitted. "Guess the recipe knew more than I did." For a moment, he didn't respond. Then, almost shyly, he took another spoonful. Another, slowly, deliberately. The tension in his shoulders eased a little. His fingers relaxed around the spoon. Emily felt something shift in the air. The silence between them wasn't heavy anymore, it felt fragile, yes, but alive. She didn't move closer. She didn't speak. She let him have this space, understanding that healing couldn't be rushed. Ethan's eyes lifted toward her, flickering with something tentative. "I didn't expect this," he murmured. Emily gave a small smile. "Neither did I." He looked down again, stirring the soup slowly. "It's good. Better than I thought it would be." Emily let herself breathe. This was progress. Small, quiet progress, but real. She didn't push for words. She didn't force conversation. She just stayed, letting the kitchen fill with warmth and steam, letting the moment exist exactly as it was. Finally, Ethan broke the silence again. "Thanks," he said, almost as an afterthought. Emily nodded. "You're welcome." He paused, staring at the bowl as if searching for something more than flavor. "It reminds me of her. Of home. I didn't think I'd remember that feeling again." Emily's eyes softened. "You don't have to forget her to have new memories. It's okay to let them live together." Ethan swallowed hard, his throat tight. He didn't respond, but the way he straightened in his chair showed that her words had reached him. The room felt warmer. Not because of the soup, not because of the light streaming through the window, but because something unspoken had started to grow, a trust, tentative but alive. Emily realized this was more than dinner. It was a bridge, built spoonful by spoonful, between two people who hadn't known how to connect. Minutes passed. Ethan finally leaned back in his chair, his expression calmer. He didn't smile fully, but his eyes weren't guarded anymore. Emily understood that smiles weren't necessary yet. Presence was enough. "I might actually finish this," he said quietly, almost to himself, taking another bite. Emily smiled gently. She didn't say anything else. There was no need. The small victory of the moment spoke louder than any words could. Later, when Ethan pushed his empty bowl aside, he lingered in the kitchen instead of retreating upstairs. He leaned against the counter near her. "Can we do this again sometime?" he asked. His voice was hesitant but hopeful. Emily's heart lifted. "Of course," she said softly. "Anytime you want." He nodded once, then turned to leave. He stopped at the doorway, glanced back, and added, "Thanks for trying." Emily watched him go, a quiet relief washing over her. This was the start of something new, something fragile and beautiful. Not replacing the past, but honoring it while slowly creating a space for the future. For the first time in months, the kitchen felt like more than a place to cook. It felt like the place where trust could grow, one gentle gesture at a time. And neither of them expected that a single taste of soup could do what words could not: open a door that had been closed for too long. Ethan sat at the table, his spoon hovering above the bowl, uncertain and hesitant. Emily leaned against the counter, drying dishes she hadn't really washed, her eyes tracking every tiny movement he made. The smell of chicken soup, warm and comforting, filled the kitchen, mingling with the faint scent of rosemary. The house was quiet, but it wasn't heavy this time. It felt expectant, as if waiting for something to happen. Ethan took a slow breath, his fingers tightening around the spoon. Finally, he lifted it and tasted the soup. The moment stretched long and delicate. His eyes didn't change, but his posture softened ever so slightly. Emily didn't move, didn't speak. She let him experience it on his own terms, understanding that trust wasn't something you demanded. "This tastes like my mom used to make it," he said quietly, almost afraid of the sound of his own voice. Emily paused, her hand on the towel. "I didn't know," she replied softly, careful not to overstep. He looked down at the bowl, tracing the steam with his eyes. "She used rosemary too. Everyone said it was weird, but I liked it." His voice wavered slightly, betraying a memory he hadn't shared before. Emily felt a small ache in her chest. She hadn't tried to recreate his mother's cooking. She hadn't planned on touching memories so deeply rooted in his heart. Yet somehow, her accidental addition of rosemary had done exactly that. "I added rosemary by accident," she admitted, a shy smile forming. "Guess the recipe knew more than I did." Ethan stared into the bowl for a moment, then picked up his spoon again. Another taste, deliberate and careful. He swallowed slowly. The tension in his shoulders loosened a fraction, and he took another spoonful. Emily noticed the smallest change in his expression, a flicker of recognition, a spark of something like comfort. For the first time, silence between them didn't feel heavy. It felt alive, fragile but promising. Emily stayed back, letting him claim this moment. She knew that forcing conversation would ruin it. She let the quiet grow into something meaningful, letting him decide how much to reveal. "This is really good," Ethan admitted, voice quieter this time, almost shy. "Better than I expected." Emily's heart lifted. "I'm glad," she said simply, keeping her tone calm. Words weren't needed beyond that. He paused, staring at the bowl as though searching for more than just flavor. "It reminds me of home," he said after a long moment. "I didn't think I'd feel that again." Emily's eyes softened. "You don't have to forget her to have new memories," she said gently. "It's okay to let them live together." Ethan swallowed hard, his throat tight. He didn't respond immediately, but his posture said everything. He was listening, absorbing her words, thinking about what they meant. He took another bite of soup, slower this time, savoring both the taste and the moment. Minutes passed. The atmosphere shifted. The space between them no longer felt guarded. There was no laughter yet, no big declarations, only a quiet understanding that something small and meaningful was happening. Emily realized she wasn't just sharing food, she was offering trust, care, and patience, and he was beginning to accept it. Finally, Ethan leaned back in his chair, a subtle relaxation in his shoulders. He didn't smile fully, but the tightness in his face had eased. Presence was enough for now, words could come later. "I might finish this," he muttered, almost to himself, taking another deliberate spoonful. Emily smiled quietly. She didn't push or comment. This small victory, a boy tasting soup and opening his heart a little, spoke louder than anything she could say. Later, when Ethan set the bowl down, he lingered. He didn't retreat to his room as he usually did. He stayed near her, hesitant but curious. "Can we do this again sometime?" he asked softly. Emily's heart lifted. "Of course," she replied, her voice gentle and reassuring. "Anytime you want." He nodded once, then hesitated in the doorway. "Thanks for trying," he added quietly, as if saying it out loud made it real. Emily watched him go, feeling a warmth that wasn't from the soup or the kitchen light. Something deeper had begun, an understanding, a fragile bond built on small acts of care, patience, and shared memories. Neither of them expected it, but that single taste had started something neither could have predicted, a bridge between two hearts learning to trust again. For the first time, the kitchen felt like more than a place to cook. It was a place where emotions could be shared silently, where grief and hope could coexist, and where a new connection had begun quietly, naturally, and beautifully. The days after that first taste of soup were different. Small changes, almost invisible, began to show. Ethan no longer rushed through the kitchen without a word. He ate at the table, sometimes lingering longer than he used to. Emily noticed it and didn't comment. She knew these moments couldn't be forced. One evening, Emily was washing dishes, the kitchen quiet except for the soft hum of the faucet. Ethan appeared beside her, leaning against the counter with his arms crossed. For a moment, they just stood there, neither speaking. Then, slowly, he said, "You're not trying to replace her, are you?" Emily turned the sponge in her hand, surprised by the question but glad he felt safe enough to ask. "No," she said softly. "I could never replace your mom. She'll always be part of you. I just want to be someone you don't have to shut out." Ethan looked down, jaw tight, then nodded slightly. "I didn't want to like you," he admitted. It felt like betraying her. Emily dried her hands and stepped closer. "Liking someone new doesn't erase love," she said gently. "It just means your heart is learning to survive." He didn't respond immediately. He just stood there, silent, letting her words sink in. Emily felt a quiet hope growing. These conversations were rare, delicate, but they mattered more than she could express. Over the next few days, their bond deepened in subtle ways. Ethan asked questions about Emily's past, about her hometown in Michigan, about what life was like before she met Daniel. She answered honestly, never pushing for more than he was ready to share. In turn, Ethan began to share small details about himself, not the grief he carried, but stories about his friends, school, and even funny little memories of his mother. One rainy afternoon, Emily suggested baking cookies together. Ethan hesitated, then shrugged. "Why not?" he said. For the first time, there was a note of lightness in his voice. In the kitchen, they worked side by side. Flour dusted the counters and their hands, laughter came in small bursts. Emily caught him smiling several times, fleeting but real. He wasn't fully open yet, but he was present. That presence meant more than words could convey. Later, while cleaning up, Ethan spoke quietly, almost shyly. "I never thought I'd feel okay with someone else around. Not like this." Emily put a hand on his shoulder, careful not to crowd him. "You don't have to rush anything," she said. "We can go at your pace." He nodded, and for the first time, there was no tension in his movements. He stayed in the kitchen longer than usual, helping her wipe counters and put dishes away. The silence was easy, comfortable. It didn't demand conversation, but it carried connection. That night, Emily watched him retreat to his room, then paused at the doorway. "Thanks for being patient," Ethan said quietly. She smiled, feeling warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. "Always," she replied. Over the next weeks, their evenings became quieter, warmer, more connected. Dinner was no longer a routine task, it became an unspoken opportunity for them to share space, even if words were scarce. Ethan began to ask for her opinion on small things, what spices to use in the soup, how long to bake the cookies. Emily noticed how he began to make eye contact more often, how his gestures became less guarded. One evening, while putting away leftovers, Ethan stopped and looked at her. "I like this," he said simply. "Being here. With you. It's different, but good." Emily felt a lump in her throat. "I'm glad," she whispered, keeping her voice calm so he wouldn't feel pressured. Ethan hesitated, then added, "I think I'm starting to understand that having you here doesn't mean I'm forgetting her." Emily's eyes softened. "You never forget. You just make room for new memories too." In that moment, something shifted. Ethan's walls weren't gone, they never would be entirely, but the cracks were widening, letting light through. Trust, once a fragile seed, was beginning to grow into something real. It was slow, imperfect, but it was alive. Emily realized then that her role wasn't to replace anyone or fix everything. It was to be patient, to stay, to offer care without expectation. And Ethan was beginning to accept that. Each small gesture, each shared meal, each quiet conversation was building a bond neither of them had imagined possible. For the first time, the house didn't feel heavy. It felt like it could hold hope. And both Emily and Ethan knew, deep down, that this fragile connection could grow into something lasting, something stronger than grief, built on patience, understanding, and the simple courage to let someone in. Weeks had passed since that first hesitant taste of soup, and the house felt different. The quiet was no longer heavy, it was alive, filled with small moments of connection. Ethan had started sitting at the table without prompting, asking questions about Emily's day, telling stories from school, even sharing little jokes that made her laugh. The walls between them were slowly coming down. One Friday evening, Daniel came home earlier than usual. He opened the front door to laughter, soft, warm, and familiar. He followed the sound to the kitchen and stopped, surprised. Emily and Ethan were standing side by side at the counter, flour and chocolate smudges on their hands, arguing playfully over whether to add more sugar to the cookies. Ethan's laughter rang clear and genuine, not the tight, polite smile he had once worn. Daniel's eyes softened. He hadn't realized how long it had been since he'd heard Ethan sound so alive. Emily caught his glance and smiled. She didn't need words, the scene spoke for itself. Later that night, Ethan knocked gently on Emily's bedroom door. She opened it to see him standing there, holding a small bowl covered with a towel. "I made something," he said, his voice quieter than usual but steady. "I tried to remember how she did it." Emily's eyes widened, touched by the effort. She took the towel and peeked inside. The smell was familiar, warm, comforting, a careful attempt at his mother's recipe. She lifted a spoon and tasted it. Her eyes filled with emotion, not because of perfection, but because of the thought, care, and memory behind it. "It's perfect," she said softly. Ethan exhaled, relief washing over him. "Thanks, for not giving up," he admitted. His words were simple, but they carried weight. They were more than gratitude, they were acknowledgement of trust, patience, and love that had grown slowly over weeks. Emily smiled, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "I didn't give up because you mattered," she said. "You still do." Ethan looked down at the floor, embarrassed but happy. He had started to believe that someone could care for him without trying to erase the past. That someone could offer kindness and patience and still respect the memories he held dear. Days turned into weeks, and routines formed. Dinner was no longer a quiet obligation, it became a space for laughter, conversation, and shared moments. Ethan began offering suggestions on meals, sometimes helping cook, sometimes just keeping Emily company while she prepared dishes. They shared stories, little victories, and even minor frustrations, but always with understanding. Emily noticed subtle changes in Ethan. His posture relaxed. His laughter came more easily. He looked at her more, without suspicion or distance. And in those moments, Emily realized the depth of what had happened. It wasn't a single act or meal that had brought them closer, it was consistency, patience, and the willingness to offer care without expectation. One afternoon, while sitting together on the living room couch, Ethan finally spoke the words Emily had hoped to hear. "I think I'm okay with this now," he said, gesturing vaguely between them. "With you being here. With all of it." Emily smiled, her chest warming. "That's all I ever wanted," she said softly. "For us to find a way together." Ethan nodded, a small, genuine smile appearing. "I didn't think I'd feel this, normal again," he admitted. "But I do." Emily reached over and lightly touched his hand. "You deserve to feel normal. You deserve to be happy." He looked at her, eyes bright but thoughtful. I think. I'm starting to understand that it's possible to have both, the past and something new, he said. Emily's heart swelled. The fear, the distance, the grief, they hadn't disappeared. They never would entirely. But they had made space for something new: trust, care, laughter, and connection. It was fragile, yes, but it was alive. That night, as Emily tucked Ethan into bed, she realized how far they had come. A simple act, a taste of soup, had opened the door. Weeks of patience, shared meals, small conversations, and gentle understanding had built a bond neither of them had expected. Standing in the doorway, she looked at him sleeping peacefully and whispered, "We're going to be okay. All of us." And in that quiet moment, the house felt like home for the first time. Not because grief had ended, but because love, patience, and understanding had created a space where healing could happen. A space where memories and new beginnings could coexist. A space where trust had grown into connection. Neither Emily nor Ethan had expected that a simple act could change everything. But it had. And now, they were ready to face the future, together.